Welcome to episode 15 of NFT World. I am with Legendary as always, and we've got a whole host of interesting topics to discuss from the world of NFTs this week. Legendary, how are you doing?
Well, good morning from looking outside of the window, cloudy San Diego, to say something different than the last 2 weeks. Doing pretty well, I guess. 2 more weeks to stay in the United States before it's back to Europe for me.
What a shame. What a shame. So you were in LA the last few days, right?
Yeah, I spent the weekend in LA. Met up with Artie Hands, whom I've seen 2 years ago. Well, 2 years ago, the last time I think. Yeah. Had a pretty good weekend. And I feel like we kind of got used to, the difference in time zones when it comes to working on our content, working on airdrop season, getting the weekly stuff out. It's actually, and it's kind of a cool feeling to know that, I do my work in the evening, go to sleep, and something happens while I'm sleeping. And that something is you looking at the tutorials that I created and trying to get them to a very easily understandable level and feedbacking me on them. So it's quite a nice process, I feel like, that we have established.
Yeah, 32 Dreams is now 24/7, 365. So we love that progression. Although we are going back to normal from next week or the week after. So to be honest, I think that is I miss our morning catch-ups. Our morning catch-ups is not the same if it's one of our mornings. Like right now, you look like a bit tired, you're yawning, you're having a coffee, having the luxury of like waking up to the new day, and it's getting towards the end of the day for me. And I want it to be the start of the day because it's like, I don't know, we're off. Our energy is different because I'm winding down, you're getting ready to go. It's
Yeah, it's a different kind of
mismatch.
energy, right? If we are both waking up, both starting our day, and I mean, like the 1 hour time difference between London and Vienna doesn't really count, I'd say.
However, we've got loads more efficient because the only issue with us being on the same time zone is that we would speak for our morning catch-ups. We would just speak for like loads of time on not relevant business stuff. We'd have, because we're on the same time zone, we'd like have the luxury of just talking. Whereas now we have to be a bit more like, oh, you've got to go and do something because it's your morning, and I've got to go and like eat dinner. So we have to be a bit more time regimented. Whereas before we just like have loads of time chit chatting, which is great, but
So what do you
probably
prefer?
less efficient. Yeah, that is actually my preference. Wasting loads of time. Right. So the first main interesting thing of this week, I think, is the BendDAO news. And this, like, a lot of people are quite scared about this. So essentially, what BendDAO is that there were a lot of loans that were taken out against NFTs. So BendDAO is a place where you can deposit a quote unquote blue chip NFT and get a certain amount of ETH given to you as a loan instantly. So there was a lot of loans taken out against NFTs. And as the markets have kind of stuttered along over the last week or so, lots of the value of those NFTs have dropped dramatically, so much so that those who took out loans have started to think that it's not worth paying back their debt, and that the lenders decided they needed to try to sell the NFTs because they're in danger of losing money on their loan. So do you want to have a go explaining a little bit about the mechanics here and why it's significant and why it's causing a bit of a stir in the market?
I mean, first of all, I think that the concept of BendDAO is a very interesting one.
It
That
is, isn't it? It's super cool. Like, we haven't done this yet. It's fusing banking with NFTs.
yeah, and it takes it a step further by not being structured like NFTFi, which again is an interesting platform itself, but it's focused on peer-to-peer lending, and here you have a more structured pool that focuses on one asset class, focuses on mutant apes, on bored apes, that everyone can either provide liquidity for or just deposit their NFT to borrow ETH against it. So I think it's pretty cool that we already reached that stage of having such a tool that allows you to get some more liquidity out of your NFT. But with that being said, it seems like the issue was that BendDAO didn't really take into account or underestimated the potential volatility of the quote unquote blue chip NFTs, and that floor prices could trend down for a significant amount of time. And if floor prices trend down, then suddenly your health factor becomes worse and worse because your collateral, the Bored Ape, the Mutant Ape, whatever it is that you're using, becomes less valuable. So relatively speaking, your borrow is more exposed and less collateralized, which can just lead to the situation that you could be liquidated if NFT prices fall, just plummet enough, unless of course you pay back your loan. And BendDAO had the very interesting concept of allowing for a 48-hour grace period, which means once you're liquidated, you have 2 days time to pay back. And that created a bit of a situation where, with the constant decrease of floor prices of the blue chip NFTs, some people got liquidated. These auctions started. These auctions had very specific rules that they need to be close, to the OpenSea floor price, etc. And it led to a situation where many apes, many other NFTs didn't have any bids on them, and people were like kind of afraid. Okay, what's happening next? And then it's like basically two fears that we've seen out there. Like one, obviously the lenders being affected who lent out ETH, but I think the more prominent discussion on Twitter was, will this contribute to NFT floor prices plummeting even further if there's no bidders on these auctions? But I think as of a couple of hours ago, there is actually a new update on the situation, and it seems like there's a proposal in motion to adjust the liquidation threshold, the auction period, the base rate for interest rates, so to mitigate those issues. And I think, in my personal opinion, that the discussion on Twitter, and some people compared this to Luna, was way over the top, because if we just look at one figure, we're talking about 250 apes, 230 mutants out of 10K respectively, 17K. So it's not a huge amount compared to the total collection, despite volumes being down. It's just, quote unquote, a couple of days worth of trading volume, maybe 1-2 weeks max. So even if there is like a supply shock, the market could absorb it over the next weeks, and it's not a situation that in any way can be compared to what happened with Terra or Luna.
Okay, so it may not have as far-reaching consequences as people might have thought initially. Just to row it back a little bit, so people get a understanding of the numbers involved. So when you said that you talked about collateralization, and the loan to value ratio which BendDAO allows is that you could borrow either 30 or 40% of the collection floor price on OpenSea. So, for example, if there was a Bored Ape of 100 ETH, you could, for Bored Apes, that would be 40%. So you'd be able to get an instant 40% loan on that. And then you also mentioned this health factor. So the health factor is very important, because that's when your asset becomes in danger. So what does that mean? So if the NFT floor price drops so low that the lenders are in danger of losing money on their loan, a health warning is triggered. And the health warning is triggered when the loan health factor goes below 1. And that's calculated with some not too difficult calculation, but it's the floor price times the liquidation threshold and divided by the debt plus the interests. So, and they give this example. So this is important for people to get a sense of what's going on. So if you buy if the Bored Ape floor is 100 ETH and you borrow 40 ETH instantly, if the floor price drops to 44 ETH, then the 48-hour liquidation protection can be triggered, which is what you just mentioned, since the health factor of your NFT back loan falls below 0. So in that 48-hour period, what can happen? You can if you were the owner of that NFT, you can come in and pay the rest of your debt, right? So you've still got you're in danger, but you can pay the rest of it if you wish to. But also, you've got this period of time where other people can start bidding on it.
Exactly. In those 48 hours, you could do that, but with the current proposal, that period is going to be reduced from 48 hours to 4 hours.
Okay. And I think one of the other big issues here was that, as you said, you have to bid, was it above the floor price?
No, it was a
And
minimum bid
above,
of 95% of the floor price.
okay,
And
so
the
it
floor
has to
price
be
on OpenSea, it's not always, the real, the real floor price of an asset, because they trade on multiple marketplaces. The collection
sure.
offer might be a bit lower than that. So it doesn't really represent the latest trending and trading price of an asset, really.
Okay. And the issue with that then was that it was not incentivizing buyers enough, because buying at 95% of a floor price is deemed like way too risky on a depreciating asset in a volatile market and in a depressed market. So I guess what one of the other proposals that they're putting through is to try to build in a bit more leeway to try to incentivize buyers to buy in at a greater discount to floor price, right? Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, exactly. So basically allow bids that are not in the 95% range of the current floor price.
I guess
And
would that guarantee though that the lenders, is that sort of capped in to the extent that that it has to cover the debt?
well,
Maybe not.
that's a point right now. If I'm looking at the health factor alert list, which they have on the platform, for example, there is what's the worst Bored Ape, quote unquote, with a health factor of 1.01 has debt of 61 ETH, and the floor price is registered on BendDAO at 69 ETH. So
Okay.
in this case, yes, I could,
You
if
could
I
buy at
don't
61.
have, yeah, and if I don't have the limitation, I could pay the debt, basically get the ape and still make arbitrage on that. But of course,
And that would,
if too many people would do that or would buy the ape, with the expectation to be able to sell it at the actual floor price, and then we have a sudden influx of listings that are at floor price, that would contribute to driving the floor price down a bit further, trigger the next round of liquidations, and so on. But still, it's just a couple, just 200 plus Bored Apes. Might seem like a lot, but it's nothing that would destroy the ape market in the long term.
yeah, that's a very good point. The scale is not too great. And actually, the main issue here is not necessarily for Bored Ape holders who are worrying that their floor price is going to get decimated. It's probably for BendDAO lenders who are wondering whether they will definitely be able to get their money back, because, as you might have seen overnight, last night, or during my night, there was a bank run on the BendDAO bank, and a wallet which had 18,000 ETH in it just approximately 48 hours ago had only 15 left, which is 25,000. So about $29 million was pulled from the protocol, with a significant amount of money owed to lenders. So they really need this stuff to sell in order to get the lenders' money back at the moment.
Yeah, and what they also did is that they increased the base interest rate to 20% to basically incentivize people to pay back their debt. And as of right now, I have the Etherscan page open. Their wallet is back to like 425 ETH. So it
it's still
seems like some
hugely
people,
down.
yeah, it's still hugely down, but at least it seems like a couple of people paid back their debt, and I assume there was more in it, and other people got back their ETH. So it seems like the proposal it seems to cover the most important aspects that were a bit flawed in the design of the liquidation threshold, the auction design, and also the amount of ETH that you ultimately could borrow against your ape or other blue chip NFTs.
Yeah, that's right. So a challenging situation which the protocol is currently in the process of working through. A message from the founder in the DAO. You mentioned a couple of changes that they wanted to make to adjust the auction price, the auction period to 4 hours, adjusting the interest rate to 20%. They also said, "We are sorry that we underestimated how illiquid NFTs could be in a bear market when setting the initial parameters. In the past several days, we got tons of feedback and suggestions from the community. After a comprehensive review and discussion, it's time to make a proposal to help ETH depositors to build confidence." Would you deposit ETH into this contract at the moment?
Probably not at the moment. I did deposit ETH before in BendDAO. I pulled it out at some stage, but I wouldn't deposit it right now, to be honest.
20% return.
Yeah, but I'm kind of in the process of trying to hoard as much ETH as possible right now to prepare myself for the merge.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the final thing. Make a proposal about if the bad debts happened, how to deal with it. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation. They're obviously having to react very, very quickly in order to try to respond to it in the best way.
Yeah,
Let's
but there's
see
like
how.
one important sentence in there in the whole proposal that I feel like we talked so much about it on our podcast, and it again says transparency is the key to trust. It's all ultimately about communication. If you don't want people to bank run, if you don't want people to spread FUD, then give them all the information that's there and do your best to reach everyone communicating that information. I feel like that can't be stressed enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think this guy's been fairly active in trying to be active and communicative during this period of time. It's obviously a very difficult situation. So I think they've done a reasonable job at trying to make the right changes as quickly as possible in a potentially stressful environment for lenders. But yeah, I did see some Bored Ape holders kind of comment being like, "Oh, this is not a big deal. It's only this number." And it did make me think, yeah, it's not a big deal for you. But like there's loads and loads of people who have all their money tied up in this protocol and they're not 100% sure. Because one of the things that people noticed was that it seemed to be the case that as soon as money was getting deposited or as soon as someone was paying back their loan, whoever was fast enough is like there are a bunch of people basically waiting for it to get filled up so that they can pull their money. So it's a bit of a first come, first serve bank run
Yeah,
at the
it felt a
moment.
bit like a game of musical chair for people to get their ETH back for a brief period.
Yeah, and like, yeah, fine. If you're an NFT holder, you don't really care, but that's it's you can see how that's a very stressful situation for certain people involved, and also for the space. Like we ideally, one of the big tech innovations in this space is that this kind of crossover between banking and NFTs can be facilitated, and we do want this type of stuff to work better. One of the kind of consequential questions I have, and we may not have an answer, but I remember reading in their documents when I was researching this for this week's article I'm writing, and they made the conscious decision to specifically say we denominate in ETH, and like that's just how it's going to be. I wonder whether this stuff would operate better if NFTs were priced in USD, because although there's still fluctuations in USD value, maybe it's less than in ETH value. What do you think about that? Very
I think it would.
instinctively.
I think it would add another layer of complexity because basically you could think your loan is fine. The Bored Ape floor doesn't really move right now because there's not a lot of volume, and then you wake up to ETH dropping 10% for whatever reasons, like it did like 2 days ago, and then suddenly you are stressed. So I like that it's honestly, I like that it's denominated in ETH and not in USDC. I know that some floor prices can look a bit more stable in US dollar terms, but on the other hand, you would also add, the other layer of speculation of people hoping that ETH goes back up and just partially repaying the loans and waiting for ETH to go back up. So I feel like this would add just another layer of speculation and complexity to it that would be difficult to handle, and it's already complex enough. So I like the ETH denomination, to be honest.
Yeah, that's completely fair enough. I'm very interested to see how it plays out. It's kind of happening live as we speak. So this has been happening over the last few days. The updated changes or proposed changes were made literally last night, as far as I know. So it's something to monitor, and we'll see where we go. One person who's been following this very closely is Cirrus NFT at Cirrus NFT, and to answer the question, what does this mean for me? He wrote that the proposal passing means there will inevitably be some great deals over the next month. If you're like me and plan on taking part in these liquidations, you'll want to check in here pretty frequently for ongoing auctions, and he provides a link to that. So, as you say, I don't think it's something which the volume is not something to worry about. It's not going to cause some sort of huge cascade, I don't think. But having said that, there will be a number of NFTs available at a lower price should you wish, or should you be looking for a lower entry point.
You know what I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to seeing Franklin, the Bored Ape pusher, and if he's going to take part in that action, and if we're going to see him tweet about auctioning, participating in auctions and flipping Bored Apes. But if it's not Franklin, there's going to be a couple of persons doing that and ultimately using the arbitrage opportunities that will present themselves. And it's going to be fun to watch. And also, like, the economics student in me likes this example. Like, this was actually one of my first thoughts of explaining what risk is, and it shows you why you get interest rates when you lend money to someone, because there is significant risk involved with, well, giving your money to other people.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Maybe I'm going to send a couple ETH to the BendDAO just to participate, just so I can say I've got a stake in it and figure out how it all works. One of the other points he makes is if you don't plan on taking part in the auctions, and again, this is maybe what you're alluding to, kind of from an economist perspective, just to see how it feels, is it's kind of suggesting that we should keep up with the bidding to get an idea of how strong the demand is for this project, right? Like, this is, I know you said, like, look, this is not a huge number, but just as a sense check of how much demand there is in the market for a asset which has been on the decrease for a little bit of time, and just to make sure that there is demand, right? Because if, heaven forbid, if the Yuga assets start tanking, or demand isn't as strong as they would like it to be, that is a problem.
Yeah, I would even take it one step further and not only ask, is there demand, but like, who is demanding the Bored
Yes.
Apes? Is it speculators who just want to flip at floor price, or is it like, genuine people who are, not that speculators aren't genuine, but like people who are genuinely interested in being a part of the Yuga Labs ecosystem and just trying to get into that ecosystem at a discounted price?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Or even alternative to that, is it people who are current holders absorbing any decrease, just in the short term, and then like let it back out into the market at a healthier time as a way to kind of artificially prop up their own holdings as they stand. So you're completely right. I think that's a point that hasn't been made. The identity of the people stepping in will be very, very interesting to observe. So yeah, this is one we spent a bit of time on this because A, it's a bit complicated, but B, is genuinely fascinating and happening as we speak. So maybe we'll double back on this next week to have a little summary of where we got to with it. Let's move on now, staying on the Bored Ape ecosystem and Yugo Labs, because they did reach a very, very significant milestone this week, which was 1 million followers on Twitter. And when they did that, they held a commemorative Twitter Spaces to celebrate their growth. More than 4,000 people attended live to reminisce on their journey thus far. And to date, 28,000 people, when I last checked, had tuned in subsequently to that Twitter Spaces. My main reflection on that is like, look, that's an important piece of news, and it's pretty wild what they have done in the last year.
And if you put it in perspective and look at other big ETH-related accounts, OpenSea, obviously being the biggest marketplace, has 1.8 million followers, and the most significant ecosystem in the world of ETH NFTs has more than half the followers of the biggest marketplace, which says a lot, in my opinion, about the influence that Yuga Labs has. And even if you take it one step further, ETH, the Ethereum account, has 2.7 mil followers, and the Bored Apes have 1 mil. So it's pretty amazing to think how far they got in a year, and well, just how fast this journey has really been.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. People will 100% write MBA courses and or theses on the Bored Ape Yacht Club entry into the Web3 ecosystem. Like, if that is not something that is done, it will have to be done because it's phenomenal what they have achieved. And there's all sorts of tiny, tiny elements. Like, I remember some people back near the beginning or even now might point back to huge collectors like Pranksy, for example, buying up a huge amount at the beginning and just holding them and then selling them off kind of periodically rather than dumping them all in the market in one go. And look, maybe that's what certain projects need. They need strong, essentially institutional hands to give a project a bit of time so that there isn't too many unique holders and there aren't too many people like flipping. So I'm sure there's all sorts of reasons why, or reasons that will be attributed to their success. And I think from a business perspective, people will be analyzing it quite closely, both, not mainstream and mainstream pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of potential that we're going to see the Bored Apes as part of many master studies, as part of, as you said, MBAs, and a lot of case studies being built around that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool to see academia, take interest in our ecosystem. It was, for me, I remember, just a quick side note, when in the Wolf Game Discord, I think it was NYU Stern, that an economics professor showed up because Wolf Game has all, the risk elements built into smart contracts, game theory, and was like, this is such an interesting application case of game theory that he's just gonna look at Wolf Game from, scholar's perspective and gonna kind of embed it into his research because it's so difficult to find real life applications of game theory on that scale with that kind of monetary incentive tied to them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's going to get incorporated quite heavily, I think. Moving on to another interesting, well, kind of a headline piece of news, which I'm always interested in because I'm a huge fan of their art. Fewocious's The Sailor sold for 350 Ether, which is approximately at current valuation. I don't have the calculator in front of me, but probably like 500 to 600K.
520, 530, something in that range.
There we go. It sold to 6529 Capital. The Sailor was one of Fewocious's most important pieces. It was sold by who is pretty much going down as one of these, or he would like to go down, as he has said himself, as a crypto art protagonist. He was also the person who sold Right Click Save to Cosimo de Medici for a crazy amount of money. So he saw all of this stuff very early and invested very early and has accumulated many of these grail inverted commas pieces. And Fewocious, yeah, congrats to the guy. He's 19 years old. He sold at Christie's, Sotheby's. This piece is now resold for this amount of money, and he released this video which I'll link to in the newsletter which I'm writing. And it's just so, he's one of the people, they're one of the people that I watch, and it's so warming to see people who genuinely and legitimately care so much about the art and what they've been able to create in this space as a consequence of digital art. Like, they, without NFTs and without Web3, his success would not have been possible. And it's just really, really cool to see someone who loves it so much and is so appreciative, and it's just chasing the dream. It's just nice to see when people are chasing the dream like that.
Yeah, and I feel like with Fewocious, their level of excitement and their energy feels pretty genuine. And I remember them recording videos after the first auctions that really started to get significant volume, and you could see how excited Fewocious was, and you could see that. And they told the story how they've been struggling, to be appreciated for the art that they created, and you just could see the genuine level of energy. And when I was in Minneapolis for VCon, there was, I think it was before the conference, like the opening party, there was like a free painting session with Fewocious. Quite a lot of people got in line, attended that, and the energy was really special. So it is, as you say, a heartwarming story, and is a very great piece of news to see that there's still art pieces even in that kind of market that manage to just get sold at such a high and such a significant price. And I think we were, off air talking a bit about our hopes that this, as it happened a couple of times before, would also trigger a run on other Fewocious pieces. But I think you mentioned that this hasn't been the case right now. But still, it feels good in a bear market, because I start to ramble, to see a high value art pieces getting the recognition and pricing action that they deserve, period.
Yeah, definitely. I think people will take what they can get in this type of market, and it's just great to see a top piece being valued in that way. But yeah, I did used to watch very closely when Xcopy would sell one of ones on Super Rare, and as he still does, for a high valuation, it often triggered runs on his edition pieces like Afterburn or Saintless, or Guzzler. Like the lower end editions would tend to run off the back of a big sale. But that was back in a market which was far more buoyant than this one. And so what we see now, or what we saw with Fewocious, was that, okay, this sale was very significant, but there was almost, or from when I last checked, which was pretty recently, there was essentially no reaction by the market to the additions, of which there are more. So it's just an interesting observation on the market aspect of things. Yes, the sales might continue, the one-on-one sales might continue very high, but there's no particular kind of market froth, which means that spills over into all of the other editions, which, maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Maybe in a more buoyant market, something else would happen, but that's just a reality of the situation we are in at the moment. One of the cool things, and maybe I'll be displaying my Fewocious in one of these rooms pretty soon, is in OnCyber, who create these virtual rooms where you can display your art, and actually they updated videos very, very recently, has also announced, and this I'm pretty proud of finding this, to be honest. It was like dug into some comments. I don't think it was a proper tweet. It was just a comment to someone else's tweet. They've announced token-gated virtual spaces coming, I think they said this week, but I'm going to be looking for it, in the very, very near future. And what the consequence of that is that you could have a video which you want to token gate, and at the moment this is just not possible, or you'd need to pay a dev an extortionate amount of money to build you a site and token gate a video, or like, because the YouTube options are not great, right? Like if you want to make something private but you share the link, but then if anyone else gets hold of the link, you can blah 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 blah. It's just not quite straightforward of how you want to token gate a video. So it was revealed by OnCyber that they can token gate rooms, and then I guess what you could do is, if you want to share a video in a token gated room, and then only NFT holders can go in, and whether they watch it all together, they watch it by themselves, they would be able to view the content privately. And that's pretty cool.
And it's pretty cool that it's going to be, as you said, accessible for people who want to use OnCyber, and it's not going to be dev-gated, meaning that you have to pay a lot of money to get someone to build your custom solution. Always liked OnCyber, always felt like it was cool if it's, more than a gallery and becomes like kind of a social hangout spot where you just could do more things with friends, and just having the opportunity to exclusively co-watch a video or consume content with fellow co-holders of a project or art piece that you're invested in makes a lot of sense, to actually go into that very direction and get people to spend more time on OnCyber, which I really like.
Yeah, I don't know why I find it so. Maybe because I was a former teacher, and the idea that I'm just like exceptionally excited about this. The idea that you can get people in a room who hold an NFT and to make it exclusive, and then you can deliver kind of your instructional content, your YouTube content, but privately, like genuinely privately, without needing links, like taking the link element out of it. That literally, I think, I need to think about it more, but I think that solves the problem of the private link, which if you share to someone else, then someone else can view it. Like there would be no other way of viewing this video without having the token. Is that right? Like I'm just thinking out loud here. I think that's right.
I mean, you could probably still record the screen and share your screen recording with someone
that's
else,
like
but
significantly harder.
You would exactly, or film it with your phone or whatever. You would just need to undergo more significant effort to do so, which less people would likely do. And it still is a way better solution than we currently have. It feels exclusive. It feels private. There's always going to be people, ripping off content and redistributing it. That's not something we can stop altogether, but it is pretty great. And, I'm repeating myself, but I especially like the aspect of getting people to spend more time on OnCyber, because that truly takes it into a metaverse direction. I feel like, if OnCyber also had like kind of a Twitter feed that I could just place on one of my walls and enjoy art, watch videos, hang out with people, and catch up on Twitter and just tweet around, I'd probably spend more time there than on Discord.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, what if they integrated Discord in some way, so you could have a computer in your OnCyber that you go to log in to Discord and Twitter, and then you can switch Twitter and Discord off when you move away from your computer in your OnCyber room.
Yeah, but
I think this is a good idea. I'm gonna tweet at them.
This is what the metaverse will have to provide at some point, right? You need your outside information to just get those messages coming. Like, again, random side note, I love reading science fiction novels, and there's a genre that's called lit RPG, which is literature as an RPG, as a role-playing game. And it's often you have those VR capsules where people get into the capsule and they play a game, and it's always in the game creator's interest that people spend as much time as they possibly could in that game. And of course, all these futuristic capsules have feeding systems, blah blah blah, everything that you need so you could even sleep in game. But they also all have like one communication link to external communication, that you can get a mail, get a message, get a call by someone from in real life, that you don't need to leave the metaverse.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a common theme with all of those books.
Yes, I definitely agree. It's a really, really good point. I think it's essential that these things allow you to access your other responsibilities and your other tasks from inside of their platform. That's the only way people will feel comfortable spending and hanging out with a little bit more of their time. That's a really good point. But yeah, I mean, I want to, whenever this comes out, I want to experiment with putting our airdrop season NFT content for our holders instead of, well, I mean, we still have tutorials with links and doing it how we do it at the moment. But what we'd want to do is have, maybe this works, right? Because we're in the process of producing another kind of summary of where we've got to and how we're planning on running things, to stick it in a room and drop the link, and that means that they would be able to see only particular aspects. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about having a little play around with that as a creator.
Yeah, I was thinking, because it's something we were discussing on 32 Dreams, that we wanted to have like a private discussion around on the merge of ETH and preparing for proof of stake and what strategies we could use for that. And that's like happening way too fast to do that on OnCyber. But I was just generally thinking about the idea of having a topic like that, getting together in an OnCyber artsy classroom and brainstorming, discussing that there, working there. It feels different. I think so.
Like, what if when I used to work at Amazon, they would give people, before meetings, you'd have reading time at the beginning, because you know how, like, if someone sends people an email, they would never, like, no one actually reads stuff in advance, so they would build in reading time to the start of each meeting to make sure everyone's on the same page and make sure everyone can like know what's going to be discussed. What if we were to have this meeting, because we were planning on doing something for some preparation and joint research on the ETH POW and, well, the Ethereum merge, but what happens with ETH when ETH goes proof of stake, and what happens with this proof of work ETH. So what if we had like, I mean, this is just me going off on a random tangent, but like different screens with like different threads that we found on Twitter, and people come into the room and they can like spend 10 minutes, like, look, this is all of the variety of things, go around, do your reading, and then you come together and do your research.
I like the idea. I like it a lot. Like, thinking
So it
about the
becomes
status
like a
quo.
repository of information as well. Rather than dumping it in a Dropbox and say, oh, read all this information, you manage to somehow, it's like the equivalent of putting it on their table in real life, but you put it on their, like putting a bunch of post-it notes on their table, and they click on a post-it note and it's like, oh, here's an article that has been suggested.
And it kind of makes data more processable for humans. Like, of course, you could put it all in a Dropbox and just track what is the most viewed thread. This got so many views, this got so many shares, whatever it is. But if you just look at the room and see, hey, most people are, I don't know, in front of two Chevys thread, and they are discussing that or spending the most time there, just looks and feels different.
Yeah, definitely. Right, let's think about how to how to put some of these ideas into practice. Let's wrap it there, man, on these crackpot ideas, but I hope at least some of them come into fruition sometime soon. It's good to chat.
Sounds good.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.